My name is Elaine Morgan. I'm 34 years old, and I never thought I'd become the villain in my family's story. Last Tuesday, I arrived early at my parents' house to pick up my daughter, Harper. What I heard when I walked through that front door will stay with me forever. "Wash the dishes well, you useless girl." That was my father's voice, thunderous, angry, and it was directed at Harper. My 6-year-old daughter stood at the kitchen sink, her tiny hands trembling in soapy water, tears silently falling down her cheeks as my sister Kimberly's daughters giggled behind her. In that moment, something inside me broke. The mortgage payments I'd been making for my parents, they were about to end, permanently. But before I tell you what happened next, tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments and hit that like button if you've ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love, because that's what this story is about. It's not just about betrayal, it's about breaking the cycle. Growing up in the Morgan household meant one thing: Kimberly came first. My sister, now 36, was always the golden child. Her accomplishments were celebrated, her failures excused, mine criticized, analyzed, and never good enough. I still remember my 10th birthday. My parents gave me a used coloring book. 2 weeks earlier, they'd gifted Kimberly a brand new bike. For no reason at all. "We have to be practical with money," my mother Diane would say. But that practicality never seemed to apply to Kimberly. Our suburban Boston home held 30 years of memories, most of them painful for me. My father Richard, a high school history teacher with a booming voice, never missed a chance to compare me to my sister. "Why can't you be more like Kimberly?" That phrase was the soundtrack of my childhood. My mother, a part-time librarian, never contradicted him. She just stood by, nodded, let it happen. Despite the constant comparisons, I excelled. I studied hard, graduated top of my class, and when college applications came around, the difference was night and day. Kimberly got into a state school. I received a full scholarship to Boston University. Guess which orientation my parents attended? Hers, not mine. They said they were too busy for mine. So I packed my single suitcase and took a bus to Boston alone. I remember sitting on that bus, staring out the window, telling myself, I will earn their respect. I will make them see me. After graduating with honors in finance, I climbed my way up the ladder and eventually landed a position as a financial consultant for one of Boston's most prestigious firms. Ironically, the daughter they'd neglected became their financial safety net. Then came Jason. My marriage wasn't planned as carefully as my career. We met at a conference, fell fast, and married within a year. Harper came not long after, a curious, joyful girl with her father's hazel eyes and my stubborn streak. But Jason wasn't ready for fatherhood. When Harper turned 3, he sat me down and said, "I've made a mistake." He left us for his 24-year-old assistant. No drama. Just gone. The divorce was fast. Painful, but fast. As a single mom with a demanding job, I needed help. Babysitters in Boston were expensive, and when my parents offered to watch Harper 2 afternoons a week, I hesitated, but eventually said yes. I wanted Harper to know her grandparents. Maybe, just maybe, they'd show her the love they hadn't shown me, but I should have known better. 4 years ago, my parents were facing foreclosure. My father had made some bad investment decisions, and they were 3 months behind on their mortgage. It's just temporary, they promised. I set up automatic transfers, $2,300 a month, every month. No questions asked. That temporary help stretched into 4 years, $110,000. And still Kimberly, who lived 15 minutes away, contributed nothing. She worked part-time at a boutique, had 2 daughters, Amber and Melissa, and somehow still got the red carpet treatment, gifts, amusement park trips, spa days. And Harper got called clumsy for spilling juice. Harper got told she wasn't as bright as her cousins. I'd asked my parents about these comments. They always waved it off. Oh, Harper misunderstood. She's being sensitive. And I wanted to believe them. I needed to believe them. But in my gut, something always felt off. Little red flags that I kept ignoring because I didn't want to admit the truth, that nothing had changed. They hadn't changed. And I was still that same little girl trying to earn love, that should have been freely given. But that Tuesday afternoon, that day, would shatter the illusion. Forever. I pulled into their driveway 2 hours earlier than usual. My final client meeting had ended early, so I figured I'd surprise Harper and maybe take her for ice cream. Kimberly's red SUV was parked crooked near the garage. Great, I thought. She must have dropped by unannounced again. I didn't knock. The door was always unlocked no matter how many times I warned my parents about security. I stepped into the foyer expecting laughter or the sound of cartoons. Instead, I heard the clattering of dishes. And then, no, you're doing it all wrong. My father's voice, loud, angry. Wash the dishes well, you useless girl. My heart dropped. I froze. I'd heard my father angry before. I'd even heard him yell at Harper once or twice when she was being rambunctious. But this wasn't that. This wasn't an irritated grandparent losing his patience. This was cruelty. My feet moved before I could think. I crept quietly toward the kitchen. My breath caught in my throat, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. And then I saw her, Harper. My sweet little girl standing on a wobbly step stool at the sink, barely tall enough to reach the faucet. Her curly brown hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her pink t-shirt soaked with dishwater. Her tiny hands, red and raw from the hot water, trembled as she tried to scrub a large pot. My father loomed over her face, flushed with anger, pointing sharply at the pot. My mother stood nearby, leaning against the fridge, arms crossed, looking more annoyed than concerned. And at the table, Kimberly, scrolling on her phone, uninterested. Amber and Melissa were playing on a tablet, giggling. "She's so stupid," Amber whispered loudly to her sister. "She can't even wash dishes right," Melissa added with a snicker. "That's because her dad didn't want her," Melissa continued. "Mom says that's why he left." I felt physically ill. Kimberly had told her daughters that Jason left because he didn't want Harper. My daughter's bottom lip trembled as she struggled to lift the heavy pot. A tear rolled down her cheek, which she quickly wiped away with her wet sleeve. "Grandpa," she whispered, her voice so small it nearly broke me. "It's really heavy." "Life is heavy," my father snapped. "Your cousins knew how to wash dishes properly at your age. But you're just like your mother, always making excuses." "Richard, please." My mother sighed more out of boredom than concern. "Let me just do it. She's obviously not capable." "No," my father barked. "She needs to learn responsibility. Not everything comes easy just because her mother thinks money fixes everything." That was it. The man who had let me pay his mortgage for 4 years without ever saying thank you was now criticizing me for being financially responsible. A dish slipped from Harper's fingers and clattered in the sink. It didn't break, but the sound made my father explode. "For God's sake, can't you do anything right?" he roared. "Your cousins were always ahead of you at everything. I couldn't take it anymore." My hands were shaking, my throat tight with rage. But my voice, it came out crystal clear. "Take your hands off that pot, Harper, right now." The entire room froze. 5 heads turned to me. Harper's face crumpled with relief as soon as she saw me. "Mommy!" She jumped down from the stool and ran to me, throwing her soaking wet arms around my legs. Her little body was trembling. "What's going on here?" I asked, placing a protective hand on Harper's head. My voice was low, controlled, but inside I was volcanic. My father crossed his arms, his mouth already forming the usual defense. "Teaching your daughter some responsibility," he said, "since you clearly haven't. By calling her useless, by forcing her to scrub dishes she can't even lift. She needs to learn." My mother cut in. "All the girls help around the house." I looked over at Amber and Melissa, still glued to their tablet. "Really? All the girls?" Kimberly finally lifted her head. "Don't start, Elaine. They already did their chores earlier." "Did they? Or is Harper just the one expected to earn her keep?" My father stepped forward, looming, trying to intimidate me the same way he had when I was a child. "Not today. You watch your tone," he growled. We're doing you a favor watching your daughter for free twice a week so you can chase your fancy career. Gratitude, I said flatly. You think I owe you gratitude for emotionally abusing my child. We never said she was stupid. My mother jumped in, but you stood by while Amber did, and don't pretend this is the first time. I knelt down to Harper's level. Sweetheart, has Grandpa talked to you like this before? Harper looked at me, then at her grandfather. She hesitated. Use your words, honey. It's okay to tell the truth. She nodded slowly. Every time I come here, she whispered, Grandpa makes me clean while Amber and Melissa play, and when I mess up, he gets really mad and says I'm not as good as them. Silence. My mother looked away. Kimberly shifted uncomfortably. My father clenched his jaw. She's exaggerating, he barked. Being dramatic? No, I'm not. Harper said, her voice stronger. You called me stupid last week when I couldn't read the word in your newspaper. You said Amber could read it when she was 5. My knees buckled. I stood slowly, fire in my veins. What else haven't you told me, Harper? She looked down at her shoes. Grandma said I shouldn't eat so many cookies or I'll get fat like Daddy. And Amber said Daddy left because he didn't want me. Grandma heard her say it and didn't tell her to stop. I turned to Kimberly. Get your daughters and leave. She raised an eyebrow. Excuse me, either you leave or you stay and hear what I really think about the way you've raised your kids to bully a 6-year-old. Your choice. She scoffed, but something in my expression made her move. With a dramatic sigh, she stood and gathered her girls. Come on, girls. Aunt Elaine is having one of her moments again. As they passed me, I added calmly, and Kimberly, if I ever hear that your daughters repeat those lies about Harper's father again, our relationship is over, permanently. The front door slammed behind them. With Kimberly gone, the air in the kitchen became suffocating. My father stared at me, his face flushed a deep purple. My mother opened her mouth, but I held up a hand before she could speak. How dare you treat my daughter like that? I said, voice trembling, not with fear, but fury. You're overreacting. My mother replied, shaking her head. Children need discipline. Discipline, I snapped. This isn't discipline. This is the same emotional abuse you subjected me to my entire childhood. The same favoritism. The same cruel comparisons. The same dismissal of anything that didn't come from Kimberly. We gave you everything, my father said, a roof, food, education. You gave Kimberly everything I shot back. I was an afterthought, the one who was never good enough. And now you're doing the same thing to Harper. You're twisting things my mother said now in full martyr mode. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us, with accusations and ingratitude. I laughed. A dry, bitter sound. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Because from where I'm standing, I've been the one supporting you. Their faces froze. Excuse me, my father said slowly. You heard me. I've paid your mortgage for the last 4 years, $2,300 every month. That's over $110,000. Kimberly doesn't even know. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it hoping desperately, hoping that maybe, finally, you'd treat me and Harper with basic respect. My father's mouth twitched. That's different. That's family helping family. Family doesn't call a 6-year-old useless. Family doesn't let other kids bully her and say her father didn't want her. Family doesn't play favorites. I took Harper's hand. We're leaving. And don't expect us back anytime soon. You're being ridiculous, my mother hissed. You can't just keep Harper from us. We're her grandparents. Watch me, I said, steady. Being grandparents is a privilege, not a right, and you just lost it. We turned toward the front door, but I heard him behind me. Don't forget who pays your bills, young lady, my father growled. I stopped, turned. You've got that backward, Dad. I pay your bills, and don't worry. That's about to change, too. We walked out. They didn't follow. The drive home was quiet. Harper sat in her booster seat, staring out the window, her little face tight and pale. At a red light, I glanced back and saw her eyes fill with tears. Are we in trouble, Mommy? She asked softly. No, sweetheart, I said gently. We're not in trouble. But Grandma and Grandpa are. We pulled into our apartment garage and parked, but I didn't get out. I turned in my seat to face her. "Harper," I said, "nothing that happened today is your fault. Nothing. You didn't do anything wrong." "But I couldn't wash the dishes right," she whispered. "You shouldn't have to wash dishes like that. Not heavy pots. That's not a kid's job. That's an adult's job. Grandpa said I needed to learn because you spoil me." Each word twisted like a knife. "Can you tell me what else happens when you're with them, even if it's hard?" As we sat in the car in the fading evening light, Harper opened up. The truth came out in slow, careful pieces. Every Tuesday and Thursday, my parents had been putting her to work, cleaning bathrooms, vacuuming, even weeding the backyard. Amber and Melissa, meanwhile, watched cartoons and got snacks. At mealtime, Harper was often left out of dessert. When she asked why, Grandma would say, "Those are for girls who behave." She was told not to eat too many crackers because she'd get chubby like her father. She was told not to complain, not to bother Mommy, because I had important things to worry about. "Grandpa said you'd be disappointed in me if I told you I messed up chores," Harper whispered. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just harsh discipline. This was manipulation, control, poison. That night, after I tucked Harper into bed with extra stories and held her hand until she fell asleep, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I logged into my online banking. There they were, years of payments. $2, $300 every month after month, year after year. I hovered over the recurring payment line. My hand trembled. Then I clicked cancel. The system asked me to confirm. I didn't hesitate. Next, I called Craig, my financial advisor. "Elaine," he answered, surprised by the late-night call. "Everything all right? I need to make some changes." I said, my voice clearer than it had been all day. The money that was going to my parents' mortgage, I want it rerouted to Harper's college fund. And I'd like to set up a trust, one that they can't access, ever. "Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely." The next morning, I had 7 missed calls and a dozen texts. Payment declined. "What game are you playing?" "Call us immediately. Your mother is beside herself." "Elaine, this is your father. We need to talk. Now." I deleted them all without responding. At work, I struggled to focus. During lunch, I called Stephanie my best friend and the only person who really understood what my family was like. After I told her everything, she said, "You did the right thing, but it feels dramatic," I said, cutting off my parents financially. "Elaine," she replied, "what's dramatic is your father calling your 6-year-old daughter useless. What's dramatic is making her weed the garden while her cousins eat cookies. What you did. That's protecting your child." Her words steadied me, but the guilt still lingered. Because for 34 years, I'd been trained to prioritize their comfort, their approval, their needs, even when it hurt me, even when it hurt Harper. Later that night, Kimberly texted, "Mom and Dad told me what you did. How could you be so selfish? They're your parents. You don't just cut them off over one little incident. Harper needs to toughen up. The world isn't going to cuddle her like you do." I stared at the message for a long time. Then after Harper was asleep, I replied, "My financial arrangement with Mom and Dad is none of your business, but if you ever let your daughters bully Harper again this time, I will cut you off. Not financially. Completely." She didn't respond, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. 3 days later, the bank called. It wasn't about my mortgage, it was about my parents. Apparently, my father had attempted to access one of my personal accounts. He claimed he had authorization. He didn't. The request was flagged as suspicious and blocked, thankfully. But still, he tried. He actually tried to steal from me. I changed every password, updated my security questions, even added 2-factor authentication to everything. That's when the bigger picture came into view. My parents didn't see me as a daughter. I was a resource, a walking ATM, a safety net they assumed would always be there. And they were grooming Harper to become the same, teaching her that her value came from what she could do, not who she was. Through calm, careful conversations with Harper and eventually with her pediatrician, I learned more. They had told her repeatedly that she wasn't as smart, pretty, or capable as her cousins. They mocked her withheld praise and forced her into adult responsibilities. They were eroding her self-worth before it had even fully formed, just like they had done to me. The most painful discovery came later. My parents had never saved for retirement. Despite 2 steady incomes for decades, they'd spent every dollar they earned. They had lived beyond their means. First assuming Kimberly would support them until she married Greg, who was financially average, and then turning to me. The mortgage payments weren't temporary. They were the beginning of what they thought would be lifelong support, and I'd enabled it, but no more. A week after I canceled the payments, my father left me a voicemail that chilled me. "Elaine, this is your father. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it ends now. We got a notice from the bank. Fix this immediately. You owe this family. Don't forget who raised you." There it was again, debt disguised as love. My mother took a different tactic. She called my office directly. My assistant answered cheerful and professional as always. "Elaine Morgan's office, how may I help you?" "This is Diane Morgan," I heard my mother snap. "Elaine's mother. I need to speak with her immediately. It's an emergency." My assistant put her on hold and looked to me. I nodded. "Mom," I answered, putting her on speaker. "What's the emergency?" "My blood pressure is through the roof because of this stunt with the mortgage," she hissed. "The doctor says this stress could cause a heart attack. Is that what you want?" "What I want," I replied evenly, "is for you to respect my boundaries and stop emotionally abusing my daughter. If you're having a medical emergency, please call 911. Don't call my office again." And I hung up. That afternoon, I sat in the waiting room of a quiet therapy office, my nerves coiled like wire. I'd made an appointment with Dr. Sarah Bennett Harper's pediatrician had recommended her. She specialized in family trauma and generational boundary setting. When I explained the situation, she nodded slowly. "What you're describing is textbook," she said. "Scapegoat child versus golden child, emotional manipulation, enmeshment. And now it's repeating with the next generation." "But am I overreacting?" I asked. "Is cutting them off financially?" "Too much," Dr. Bennett tilted her head thoughtfully. "Elaine," she said gently, "if a stranger treated Harper the way your father did, would you continue paying that stranger's bills?" "No," I said instantly. "Exactly. Financial support isn't an obligation, especially not when it enables abuse. Your parents are capable adults. Harper is a child. Your job is to protect her." I exhaled something heavy, leaving my chest. She was right. 2 days later, I was picking Harper up from school when I ran into Kimberly in the parking lot. She spotted me before I saw her and stormed over. "The bank is threatening foreclosure again," she said bluntly. "Mom and Dad can't pay without your help." I opened the back door and helped Harper into her booster seat. "That's unfortunate." "That's it," Kimberly snapped. "That's all you have to say? They're your parents." "Elaine, yes," I said calmly, "and Harper is my daughter. I'm not going to fund people who mistreat her, family or not." Kimberly's face darkened. "Abuse. You really believe that's what this is? You're being dramatic." Dad was trying to teach her responsibility by calling her useless, by forcing her to clean while her cousins sat around, by comparing her to kids 2 years older than her every chance he got. I kept my voice steady, but low. "That's not discipline, Kim. That's emotional abuse, and we both know it." Her expression faltered just for a second. Then, "So this is about childhood jealousy, isn't it? You've always hated that I was the favorite." "No," I replied. "This is about protecting my child, and if you had any empathy, you'd understand that." She didn't answer, just turned and walked away. That evening, my parents showed up, unannounced. I saw them through the peephole of my apartment door, standing close together, tension radiating from them both. I didn't open the door. "Elaine, open this door right now," my father barked. "We need to talk. I'm not opening the door," I replied, speaking through the closed door. "Please leave." "This is ridiculous," my mother cried. "We're your parents. We need to talk about this like adults." "I agree," I said. "When you're ready to speak respectfully, we can meet with a family therapist present." Until then, please leave. Or I'll call building security. You'd call security on your own parents, my father shouted. After everything we've done for you. Yes, I said calmly. Because I think we have very different memories of what you did for me versus what I've done for you. They left, eventually. But as he walked away, my father turned and shouted, "This isn't over, Elaine." He was right about that. The next day, my phone rang. It was Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, calling from Vermont. We weren't especially close, but she'd always been kind to me growing up. The kind of aunt who slipped you a cookie when your parents said no or whispered, "You're doing great, sweetie," when no one else was paying attention. "Elaine," she began cautious, "I've been hearing some concerning things from your mother. I could already feel where this was going. She says you cut them off completely because of some misunderstanding with Harper," she continued. I sighed. "It's not a misunderstanding, Aunt Linda. Dad was verbally abusing Harper, and Mom stood by and did nothing, just like when I was growing up." There was a pause. "Then I saw it, you know." That stopped me. What I saw, how they treated you compared to Kimberly. I should have said something years ago. But your mother, well, she doesn't take criticism well. Every time I tried, she cut me off for months. Eventually, I gave up. Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Elaine. I should have been braver." Tears stung my eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know. For what it's worth," she continued, "I think you're doing the right thing. Protecting Harper. And between us, your parents have always been terrible with money." "What do you mean your grandfather left them a sizable inheritance enough to retire comfortably? They burned through it in less than 5 years. Vacations, unnecessary renovations, bad investments. They've always assumed someone would bail them out. The final puzzle piece clicked into place. First Grandpa, then me. It was never about love. It was about leverage. 2 weeks after I canceled the payments, the foreclosure notice landed. As expected, my parents didn't take responsibility. Instead, they sent a mass email to the entire extended family. They painted me as ungrateful, unstable, and cruel. Claimed I had abandoned them over a minor disciplinary moment involving Harper. But this time, the narrative collapsed. Several relatives who had witnessed their favoritism over the years replied, all defending me. One cousin wrote, "I saw how they treated Elaine growing up." This doesn't surprise me. Another, "We all know Kimberly was the favorite." I don't blame Elaine for protecting her daughter. A few reached out privately offering support. For the first time in my life, the family script was no longer being written by my parents, and they hated it. Meanwhile, Harper had started therapy with Dr. Martinez, a child psychologist who specialized in emotional trauma. After just 3 sessions, Dr. Martinez requested a private meeting. Harper is showing signs of anxiety and low self-esteem, consistent with chronic emotional mistreatment, she said gently. The good news is you caught it early. With continued support and absence of the negative influences, she's incredibly resilient. So, she's going to be okay. I asked, my throat tight. With time and healing, yes. She paused. I strongly recommend continuing to limit contact with your parents, at least until there's a significant change in their behavior. I nodded, more certain than ever that cutting them off financially and emotionally had been the right move. A month in the fallout intensified. The bank scheduled the foreclosure auction. Reality had finally started to catch up with my parents. And then came the call. Sunday afternoon. My father's number flashed across my screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Elaine." He began, his voice noticeably subdued. "We need to talk. In person." "I'm willing to meet," I said, "but only with a therapist present." He sighed. I could almost hear the gritted teeth. "Fine. Whatever you want." I arranged a session with Dr. Bennett, a neutral location, ground rules, clear expectations. The day of the session, I hired a babysitter for Harper. I didn't want her anywhere near the emotional landmine that was sure to erupt. My parents arrived exactly on time, something that had rarely happened in my childhood. They looked older. My father, thinner. My mother, pale and tightly wound. Her hair, always perfectly styled, was pulled back in a messy bun. Dr. Bennett opened the session with calm authority. "We're here to communicate openly and respectfully," she said. "Everyone will have a chance to speak. The goal is understanding and ideally change." My father shifted in his seat. Dr. Bennett turned to me. "Elaine, would you like to begin?" I took a breath. "I'm here because I want to establish clear boundaries. What happened in your kitchen last month, calling Harper useless, forcing her to do chores while her cousins played, that was emotional abuse, and it wasn't an isolated incident." My mother immediately cut in. "That's not fair, Diane," Dr. Bennett said gently but firmly. "You'll have your turn," I continued. "This behavior, favoritism, comparisons, criticism is exactly what I grew up with. The difference is now I'm a parent, and I refuse to let Harper grow up believing she has to earn love by being perfect." I paused. "As for the financial support, I helped you for 4 years because I wanted to, but it became expected, assumed, and when I stopped, you retaliated. That's not love. That's control." When I finished, my father practically exploded out of his chair. "This is ridiculous. We've done nothing but love Harper. You're blowing this out of proportion." "Kids need discipline," he snapped. "The world doesn't coddle them." "There's a difference," I said, "between discipline and humiliation, between correction and shame." My mother jumped in next. "We've always done our best. We love Harper, and we're your parents. You can't just cut us out." "It wasn't one incident," I said quietly. "Harper told me everything. The chores, the comments, the comparisons." "She's exaggerating," my father said flatly. Dr. Bennett leaned in. "Children don't typically fabricate patterns of emotional mistreatment," she said. "They may misinterpret isolated incidents, but consistent stories, those usually have a basis in reality." My father looked ready to argue again, but Dr. Bennett cut him off. "What matters now," she said, "is whether you're willing to change, to see the harm and stop the cycle." And then finally came the real question. "If we do," my father said slowly, "will you start paying the mortgage again?" There it was, the priority, not Harper, not the relationship, the money. "No," I said, "that door is closed. I'm not your retirement plan." I looked them both in the eye. "What I'm offering is the possibility of a relationship with Harper, but only if things change, significantly. You can't keep her from us." My mother said, voice rising. "We're her grandparents." "Actually, she can," Dr. Bennett interjected calmly. "Legally, ethically, and most importantly as a mother, Elaine has every right to decide who has access to her child, especially if that access is causing harm." The room fell quiet. I could see the war playing out on my parents' faces. Pride, anger, disbelief. The loss of control was suffocating for them. My father leaned forward, locking eyes with me. "So what, this is some kind of emotional ransom? If we jump through hoops, you might let us see her." "No," I said firmly. "This isn't a punishment. It's a boundary, and it's non-negotiable." Dr. Bennett outlined the path forward. "If you'd like to rebuild trust and have a relationship with Harper, here's what I recommend," she said. 1, attend regular therapy sessions to examine and correct harmful behavior patterns. 2, acknowledge past favoritism and its impact. 3, agree to supervise visits only after significant progress is observed. 4, respect all of Elaine's parenting decisions without argument or undermining. My father scoffed. "Therapy. You think I need therapy?" "Yes," I replied without blinking. "I think we all do." My mother glanced at him, then at me. For a moment, her expression softened. "If that's what it takes to see Harper again, we'll do it." I nodded, but there was no warmth in me. Not yet. Trust once broken takes time to rebuild. As for the mortgage, I added that part of our relationship is over, permanently. "I'm happy to refer you to a financial advisor who can help you restructure your budget, maybe even downsize, but I will not resume payments." My father's face darkened again. "We can't sell the house. It's our home. It's a house you can't afford, I said gently, and losing it isn't as bad as losing your granddaughter. There was silence. 2 weeks later, the foreclosure notice arrived in their mailbox. I didn't hear from them directly, but I saw the listing online. They were putting the house up for sale. They'd found a 2-bedroom condo nearby that they could actually afford. The equity from the sale would give them a fresh start, but only if they finally learned how to live within their means. For the first time in decades, they had to rely on themselves, and it was about time. Meanwhile, Harper continued her sessions with Dr. Martinez. The changes were slow, at first subtle, but I noticed them. She laughed more. She stopped apologizing for small things like dropping her fork or forgetting to put her shoes away. She started asking questions again, big, thoughtful, curious questions that reminded me of the bright, joyful girl she'd always been. Her teacher emailed me one morning. Harper raised her hand to answer a question in front of the whole class today. Last semester, she wouldn't speak at all unless called on. Whatever changes you've made at home, they're working. I read that email 3 times and cried the 4th. One afternoon, Harper and I were walking home from school when she stopped at the corner near the bakery. "Mommy," she said carefully, "are Grandma and Grandpa mad at me because I told you what happened?" I knelt down beside her. "No, sweetheart, they're not mad at you, and if they are, then they're not people we need in our lives." She looked uncertain. "But you still talk to them sometimes." "I do." I nodded. "Because they're learning. Just like you're learning math and spelling, they're learning how to treat people kindly, and until they learn, we're keeping our distance." She thought about it. Like a timeout, I smiled. Exactly. Adults need timeouts too. 3 months after our first therapy session, my parents requested another. Dr. Bennett sat with us again, this time in a different tone. They had attended 6 sessions of their own. "They've shown some willingness to reflect," she said, "particularly your mother. We met in the same room, same seats, but something had changed." My mother looked tired. Not just physically, but emotionally, like someone who had stopped pretending she didn't know what she'd done. "I saw how Richard spoke to Harper," she said quietly, "and I did nothing. Just like I did nothing when he spoke to you that way. I told myself it was normal, that it built character, but I was wrong." She looked at me, eyes glistening. "I'm truly sorry, Elaine, for letting it happen to you, and for letting it start again with Harper." My father cleared his throat. I was wrong to call Harper useless. No child should hear that. I'm trying to do better." It wasn't a sweeping apology. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. We agreed to a short supervised visit at a neutral location, a public park near our apartment. The day of the visit, I dressed Harper in her favorite yellow dress. She was nervous, clutching her stuffed elephant. "What if they're mean again?" she whispered. "If they are," I said, "we leave. Right away. You're in charge of your comfort today." She nodded, brave and small. At the park, my parents were waiting with a blanket and a picnic basket. They'd brought a book instead of candy, a small but important gesture. My father didn't rush to hug her. He simply waved and said, "Hi, Harper. I brought something about dinosaurs. I remembered you like them." Her eyes widened. "I do." He held it out like a peace offering. My mother smiled cautiously. "We thought maybe we could read it together." Harper nodded slowly and sat beside her. They read. Just a few pages. No comments about her posture or pronunciation. No comparisons to Amber and Melissa. Just a quiet, strange peace. As we were leaving, Harper surprised everyone by hugging my mother. "Bye, Grandma. I like the book." My mother's eyes welled with tears. "I'm glad, Harper. I hope we can read more together soon." The following month, something happened I hadn't expected. Kimberly reached out. A simple text. "Coffee sometime, just us." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part, the part still healing from decades of being second best, was curious. We met at a cafe in Cambridge. Neutral ground. Kimberly was already seated when I arrived, looking unusually nervous. She stirred her coffee obsessively, her usual confident posture slightly collapsed. "I didn't realize how much they depended on you," she said, skipping any pleasantries. "The mortgage, the bills, all of it." I had no idea. I sipped my tea. "They didn't want you to know. I think they were afraid you'd ask me to split the responsibility." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "I probably would have." There was a long pause. "I've been thinking," she said finally, eyes not quite meeting mine, "about how they treated us growing up." A flicker of old defensiveness passed across her face. "I always knew I was the favorite, but I didn't realize how unfair it was until recently." I stayed quiet. I wanted her to sit with that truth. She took a shaky breath. "You were held to impossible standards. But I don't know. I wasn't expected to do anything on my own, and now I don't know how to handle real responsibility." I blinked. It was the most self-aware thing I'd ever heard her say. "I've been watching Amber and Melissa." She continued, her voice lowering, "and I'm worried I'm doing the same thing to them, letting them think they're better, smarter, more deserving. I don't want to raise another generation of this." For the first time in a long time, I saw Kimberly not as my rival, not as the golden child, but as a woman really trying to rewrite a legacy. "There's still time to change that," I said softly. She nodded, eyes misty. "I hope so." We started slow, a few brief supervised playdates between Harper and her cousins, public parks, group museum outings, small steps. At first, Amber and Melissa were distant, stiff, even a little smug. But Harper, resilient, brave Harper, held her own. And then one afternoon, something extraordinary happened. The girls were working on a puzzle together. Harper struggled with a tricky corner piece. Melissa opened her mouth, her tone already forming something sharp. But Amber stopped her. "Let her try," she said quietly. Harper looked up, startled. Melissa rolled her eyes but said nothing, and then Amber did something unthinkable. She helped. No teasing, no superiority, just simple kindness. It was a moment I never thought I'd see. Later, I pulled Kimberly aside. That was different. She smiled, a little surprised herself. "We've started therapy, as a family, the girls and I." My eyebrows raised. I told them the truth she said, that sometimes adults make mistakes and that we're going to work on being kinder, less competitive. I placed a hand on her arm. "That takes courage." "Yeah," she nodded. "Turns out being the favorite doesn't prepare you for real life, but watching what happened with you and Harper, it woke me up." Harper's confidence continued to blossom. At school, she volunteered to be a reading buddy for the younger kids. At home, she laughed more freely, danced barefoot in the living room, made up songs about our cat Lulu, and with her grandparents, things weren't perfect. But they were improving. We kept visits short, consistent, and supervised. My father started bringing books instead of instructions. He listened more, interrupted less. One weekend, Harper accidentally spilled juice on his pants. I held my breath, waiting for the old rage. Instead, he chuckled and said, "Well, guess I needed a new pair anyway." My mother visibly flinched at the stain, but said nothing. Progress. At another visit, Harper recited a poem from school. When she stumbled over a word, my mother started to correct her, but stopped herself. "Take your time, honey," she said instead. "You've got this. Small victories. But victories nonetheless." During a group session with Dr. Bennett, we did a simple but powerful exercise. Each person had to share what they needed from the others to feel safe and loved. When it was Harper's turn, she thought hard before saying, "I need everyone to remember that I'm still learning, and it's okay if I make mistakes." The room was quiet. Even Dr. Bennett looked moved. From the mouth of a 7-year-old came the lesson generations had failed to learn. Later that night, after Harper had gone to bed, Kimberly and I sat on the couch in my apartment. The wall that had stood between us since childhood, the one made of comparisons, resentment, and unmet needs, had begun to crumble. "I always thought you were jealous," Kimberly admitted. "I was," I said honestly, "but not of you. I was jealous of the way they looked at you. spoke to you, believed in you." She sighed. "I thought you were just cold, distant." I didn't understand that being the favorite came at a cost too. We weren't best friends, but we were becoming something healthier, honest, equal, real. As the months passed, something incredible began to unfold. The anger I once carried like armor began to fade, not because I forgave quickly, not because I forgot, but because I could finally see the impact of the changes we had fought so hard to make. Harper was thriving, not just healing, flourishing. Her teachers noticed first. Elaine, her homeroom teacher, told me at a conference Harper has become one of the most confident voices in class. Last year, she barely spoke above a whisper. Now she's the first to raise her hand. I nodded, trying to keep the tears at bay. She's even mentoring a younger student who struggles with reading. The teacher added, "It's remarkable." At home, Harper had started setting her own boundaries. She told me when she was overwhelmed, when she needed space, when she was ready to talk. And when we visited her grandparents, always supervised, always short, she no longer flinched. She didn't brace herself for insults. She didn't shrink under pressure. She stood tall. One afternoon after a visit, Harper and I sat together at the kitchen table eating apples and peanut butter. She was coloring. I was finishing up some work emails. She paused and looked up. "Mommy, yeah, baby, grandpa didn't correct me when I said astronauts instead of astronauts." I blinked. "Oh," he just smiled and said, "That's what practice is for." "That's new, right?" I smiled. "Yeah, that's new." But not all the healing was external. I had work to do, too. For years, I had tied my worth to my ability to provide. I had measured my value through financial contributions, sacrifices, overachievements. I had believed deep down that if I just did enough, maybe my parents would love me the way they loved Kimberly. Maybe I could earn my way into their hearts. But I had been wrong. What I gave them wasn't love. It was leverage. And they had used it until it bled me dry. Now, without that financial leash, I was finally free to evaluate our relationship on emotional terms. And I realized something. They were trying. Not perfectly, not consistently, but trying. They downsized, sold the big house, moved into a modest condo. My father had taken a part-time job giving tours at a historical museum, something he actually enjoyed. My mother had picked up extra hours at the library and started volunteering at a community reading group. They weren't asking for money. They were managing. And slowly, painfully, we were finding something new. A boundary-based relationship built not on guilt or obligation, but honesty. Then came the message that would become a defining moment in our family's history. It was a text from my father, short, barely punctuated. "Thinking about you and Harper. Sorry I let you grow up thinking you were less." I stared at it for a long time. There were no emojis, no attempt at smoothing over, just words and the weight they carried. I didn't reply immediately. I didn't know how. But the next time we visited, I brought the message with me, printed, folded in my purse. "Thank you," I said quietly when we were sitting on a park bench watching Harper chase butterflies with Melissa and Amber, for what he asked, for that text. He nodded once. Didn't know how else to say it. "You just did." A week later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my parents' bank. I almost threw it away, thought it was another debt notice sent to the wrong address. But when I opened it, I froze. It was confirmation of a wire transfer. To me, $5,000 from my parents. A note scribbled in the margin of the printout read, "For Harper, college fund." It's not much, but it's a start. I sat at my kitchen table, the paper trembling in my hands. Harper ran into the room holding a drawing of our cat with fairy wings. "Mommy, look," I smiled through tears. "It's beautiful, sweetheart, just like you." The next therapy session brought something I never expected. Dr. Bennett asked Harper if she'd like to share anything with her grandparents. Harper nodded. She looked directly at them, her voice steady. "I felt sad when you used to say mean things about me. It made me think I wasn't smart or good, but I know now that I am, and I hope you don't talk to other kids that way anymore." There was no fear in her voice, no apology for taking up space, just truth. And for once my parents didn't argue. My mother wiped her eyes. My father gave a single solemn nod. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was honest. And then one spring evening the cycle truly broke. Harper dropped her ice cream cone during a walk with my parents. The treat splattered across the sidewalk. Her eyes darted toward my father, panic flashing across her face. I saw it happen, how her little body tensed, ready for the yelling that had once followed every mistake. But instead, my father knelt down and said gently, "That happens sometimes. Let's go get another one." That moment, that single sentence meant more than any apology. It meant he was changing. It meant the damage he caused wasn't final. It meant Harper was safe. As we walked back to the ice cream stand, Harper slipped her hand into mine. "Mommy," she said, "I think Grandpa's learning." I smiled. "Yeah, baby, I think he is."